This is the theme of Setback in Blood Out, Territorial Setback. When you can't defend your territory, select frames. So now he needs to truly look the part. He can't look the part sitting in the motel room with tattoos and smoking and drinking or whatever. He's got to get out. There's no way around it. So he's going into a neighborhood that is an opposing neighborhood, um, enemy territory. So here's this crossing territories again. He is now an assassin, or he has tatted himself as an assassin, and he has branded himself as an assassin. So now he needs to tell the people around him that he is an assassin. This territory that he's crossing into is Indigo territory. So these are, I guess, little officers, gang officers, sergeants, lieutenants, or something like that. And there's some guys across the street who are also guarding the area. And so this crossing over into the territory should net him a reputation, because of course he's going to, fight them and take them down. And it's almost like building a record of success, right? So when you first enter your field, your career field, you pay your dues. You begin building a record of successes in terms of the work that you put in, and then you are promoted, etc. And so this begins in some ways paying his dues, in a sense, right? What you would normally do if you were first getting into a gang, you have to be jumped in, right? And then you begin racking up passing certain tests. And sometimes those tests are violent. Sometimes those tests can be other types of criminal. It can definitely be drug running, because you're not going to be part of a gang and not do drug running. I mean, if that's the case, anybody can basically be in a gang. But he's crossing territories, and that's what I want you to take from this particular image. And so, of course, he knew that they were going to come after him. It's just obvious, right? And so they do come after him. There's one with a bat, and he's eventually going to take that very same bat and beat them with it, of course, right? And so the image that is conveyed here is purposeful. It's a purposeful. And then there's that looking back again, right? And this time it's looking back to engage. Whereas when he was looking back at the precinct of where Detective Hardwood was, he was looking back in anger. This is purposeful here. This is strategic. This is him actually going to engage them. I also want to note with the visual here, not only is he crossing territories, Michael, in terms of one gang territory to another, he's also crossing the color line when you think about it. Indigo is a predominantly black gang, and of course Michael is white. And so we know that it's an issue because one of the gang members yells out, "Yo, white boy." And that's always a signal that this is going to be a race-based issue. And the black guy is saying that, of course, but this is crossing also the color line, right? And it has major, major implications for why a white boy would decide to cross over into a predominantly black neighborhood and engage the gangs. Well, I think there's always part of some sort of, putting in your dues, color against color, race against race, right? You're nobody if you don't engage the other race. Of course, we always say there is no systemic racism, right? But this is one sort of level of it. And so when Michael comes into this territory to engage this crew of gang members, he's doing it not only from a place of territorial wars, putting in his dues, crossing territories, but he's also doing it from the standard code that you always engage black and brown, or black and brown always engages white, right? So this is also crossing the color line. So the two guys at the back represent, some form of security, of course, right? They are surrounding him. Remember that you see this a lot, this technique, the writer director. And, we saw it with David when they surrounded him. Then we saw it with Michael and his partner and the other two partners surrounding David on the ground. And then we saw it with Michael being surrounded by Detective Hardwick and his crew. And so we see this kind of grouping of one person in the middle, and it's kind of like everyone around them. And it always reminds me of little Sally Walker on the recess playground. And, and if you don't know that particular tune, you can always find it out. You can seek out that information. But this is the start of them now engaging each other. They don't know each other. And it's interesting how you will fight someone you don't really know. But because they have different skin tones, it's just like an automatic, we're going to engage each other and fight. No thinking, no rhyme, no reason, no logic to it. It just doesn't matter. This is what the code is. So the Indigo guy, the guy with the big afro, he's basically saying, what is a assassin doing on Indigo territory? And in many ways, he has every right to ask that question. It's their territory. But then Michael gets into this sort of moral thinking about, so, this is your territory, right? And so it looks like, and then he says, the street belongs to the hookers and drunks. This is something that you should clean up. And so now he's getting into this kind of, it's funny that he's a fake criminal trying to tell them to do better as a criminal, as real criminals, right? He's a fake criminal trying to tell them to do better as real criminals. And so there's that sort of interesting how the writer director is trying to give Michael some credibility, some legitimacy, but it also doesn't ring true for the viewing audience, because we know who Michael is. We know who he is. Now, he's very convincing in this role, the role that he's playing as a criminal. He's extremely convincing. So when he says it's something that you need to clean up, he's acting like a moral enforcer. And it's like all these gang members coming together and saying one person needs to be much more moral than the other, which is kind of ironic, right? But he definitely is convincing. But it's just interesting how the writer director is using his character as a fake criminal to tell real criminals what they should be doing and how they should be doing a lot better, versus Michael, if he had stayed on his original path of being a cop and maybe starting a gang community program and then making that kind of comment, then maybe that might ring true. But it is interesting, though, to think about that if you're supposed to run your territory, you should run your territory well. And that your territory shouldn't be filled with hookers and drunks, and that you should clean it up. It's kind of like cleaning up your house. It's your house. You don't want your bed unmade and the dishes in the sink and the floors unswept. You want to make sure that it's done well, that it looks like a nice neighborhood. But you're not going to be that responsible as a criminal. You're too preoccupied with being a criminal than to care about the actual environment around you. So it's almost like, they, just as much as Michael is a fake criminal in this regard, they are just as much as the surrounding gangs or fake community organizers, fake community people who are trying to maintain community because they don't really care about the community. They have no work ethic beyond standing watch. Right, there's that watching again. They have no work ethic other than standing watch, and then when they feel they are triggered, they want to get into a fight. And I don't think people are always triggered. I think people just want to fight. I think they just want to engage. They just want to feel powerful in the moment or whatever. It doesn't matter if it results in the death of somebody. They just want to fight. So this kind of engagement here is very interesting. A fake criminal talking to real criminals about doing better, whereas the real criminals are not as concerned about their own community, and they are just as fake in their efforts as well. So there's that continued exchange, right before they're going to fight. And then he's putting on some handchucks or something like that. I don't know what that is, because I don't fight. And Michael is saying, so is that the best you got? And in his youth, it's interesting, in his youth, that's the best he got. He doesn't have any other skill beyond putting on this little hand thing for defense. He's wearing a chain, so he thinks the chain is good protection. He got something on his wrist. He thinks that is protection. He got a coat on, some kind of jacket or shirt or whatever. But beyond that, he thinks putting on this ring here to fight Michael is enough. He's not relying on any skill because he has no skill. Many of these people who join gangs, they don't have any skill. Some, like I said previously, some of these people were walking home from high school. Somebody jumped them, a crew jumped them, and they decided, I'm going to join a gang so no one can jump me ever again. They join the gang for protection, but they don't learn any real skill. Your opponent, your enemy does, however. But they think just the idea of now being part of a gang is enough of protection and knowledge than to actually develop skills. So this is an interesting question that Michael poses. Is that all you got? So the fight begins, and Michael beats them all with his bat. He displays a lot of skill. I mean, a lot of skill. He's managed to take down 4 of them without even coming with a gun or with any kind of instrument, to fight. He didn't come with anything. He just came with himself. So he displays a lot of skill. He's fast, he's aware, and very aggressive. It is interesting how Michael is not jumped in. And I understand that there's some age on him and that there is the expectation from the enemy or even his own crew that he's already jumped in and that it is not necessary to do so. Of course, I think this is the prerogative of the writer-director. But I also think on some level, on some very strange level, that this scene where he's taking down the 4 guys is almost like a jumping in process, because there's no official jump in. He comes on the scene as somebody who is part of the assassins, but he's not with the assassin crew. He has nobody behind him. And we're going to later see that he's being watched by Anthony and Sticks, who got David killed. And it's interesting that he could just easily walk on. It's kind of like an actor in his or her profession. There are, I think, some, or let's not say actor, a dancer who wants to be part of, I don't know, some kind of dancing musical or whatever. You can do a walk-on. And this reminds me of that we don't see him jumping in. We don't see the same dynamic that David got, right? David being in the middle and he having to fight for his life in a sense, right? And with Michael, maybe age plays a factor, and it's just assumed that he doesn't have to go through that same process. But I also think it's skipping. And that's at the behest and prerogative of the writer director, mainly because of film timing or something. But I also think that there's hierarchy levels, authorities, and that assassins might have it like that, where they can just kind of skip. But we don't see him jumping in. We don't see him really connecting with the crew before he tries to take down these four men. It's like he has to collect a crew, and the way that he's going to collect a crew is to beat these four men. And it works the same way, and he's also taking their bat and beating them, as I noted, sort of like that moral enforcing that I mentioned. But I wonder too how easily it is for you to fight people that you don't know, especially if you were in a uniform, a cop uniform, and you were supposed to protect and serve. So, that's a strange psyche to change from someone protecting the community to now fighting the community. And the thing is that these four guys had nothing to do with David being killed. But that's what happens oftentimes in some race-based situations, that you fight the people who oftentimes don't have anything to do with what happened with your loved one, right? And it's much easier to fight them than it is to fight the people who actually do. So to me, I don't want to get too much into the race-based issue. I just thought it was very interesting to note that in terms of crossing the color line. But the most important aspect of this is to me, is his way of jumping in or being jumped in. And he's winning, he's winning. This is sort of like his, first test. If he was having to take a test in terms of determining his loyalty, his skill, his stomach for this life, this would be his first test. So again, he's being watched. So that's Anthony out to the left, and then that's Squat with the two braids, and then at the back of the car is Sticks. And I wonder too how it is that they just so happen to be in the neighborhood to watch this fight. Maybe they were just driving along, right? But this tells me that that this crew here monitors the Indigo crew, that they also cross territories, and it's their way of surveilling, right? It is their way of keeping tabs on this Indigo crew. So anytime they feel like they can come over, cross territories and come over and do whatever it is they want to do, they can. They have that prerogative. That's why you have the guy ask, what is an assassin doing over here on the Indigo territory? And I forgot to note this in a previous slide, that how does the guy with the afro know that Michael is part of the assassins? To me, it doesn't seem like the tattoo is visible enough for him to catch that in the dark. But it may be, again, like I say, this sort of color by color, color against color, that it may just be assumed racially that he is part of that crew, versus anyone else coming along who may be black might be assumed as part of the Indigo crew. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't catch that until I kind of went back over my notes. But they're being watched. And remember, watching is, for my film analysis, a sub-theme. For any other film critic or other film analysis, it may be a major theme. So there's that sustained fighting that you see here. Michael just has the energy, has the stamina, and he's much older than these other men, but he's not going to let it up. He's not going to let up, because he's trying to get to another side, and fighting the Indigo crew, the opposing enemy. The enemy is a way for him to get to the other side. And then they sort of yell at him and talk to him, or, you know, in man code, right? And he yells out, you know, do it. Because I guess what they're basically suggesting, all of their voices were going all at once, so it's kind of hard to hear. But I have to assume is that they were basically saying, we'll take you down, we'll do this, we'll do it, or whatever. And then Michael says, do it. And of course, they run off. They don't have the stamina as young men, but that basically tells me they don't have the skill as young men to withstand this type of fight. And I wonder sometimes why people get into these types of groups and gangs and things like that, because I realize that people who are bullies, they can only really bully when they have a crew behind them. You hardly ever see them do one-on-one with nobody around, right? So this is a major setback for Indigo. Assassin, this fake assassin, but assassin no less, has won against the Indigo crew. So this makes them vulnerable. They're going to remember him, remember his face, of course, and they're going to target him later when they try to do a drive-by. But this is a setback for them because, and the thing is, instead of doing the drive-by with guns, trying to solve the problem, why don't you learn why you lost this fight? Why don't you take some time to reflect on your weaknesses and your knowledge base and your reasoning behind challenging a person coming into your territory when you don't have the skill set to defend your territory? And that's really what this is about, that they are standing on the corner like they are in the military, trying to guard the neighborhood, but they don't have the build, the mind, the passion, the skill set, the aggression, because even their aggression is kind of fake. It's like them trying to step into an actor's role, right? Like the director says action, and then they just act what they think a gang member should be. Now, all of these are actors, of course, but the people who often are in gangs, to me, they're just acting out a role. They're trying to be aggressive for the sake of being aggressive, and they don't have anything to back that up. So this is a setback for them, and it's a very interesting setback because the fake criminal has just beat up the real criminals, and this moral enforcer has just put them all in their places, in a sense, right? And so now he has gained legitimacy, as if he was racking up points in a video game. He has gained further legitimacy. All right, so hopefully you were able to gain some insight from this lecture. Please like, subscribe, and visit. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can visit my website, reginawhyfavors.com. You can always send me an email. Please purchase the book when it comes out. It's going to come out approximately August 2021. I needed to make some changes to it and do some final editing. So the book title is Overcoming Setback, 5 Keys for Entering and Exiting Correction. Thank you for listening to this audio. Have a great day.